So good evening, everyone. I hope you're well. Thanks for attending our event, British Information Modelling. One of Joseph's puns, but thanks for coming along. First up is David Philp, Global Director of BIM at AECOM, and up you come.
Great stuff. Thank you, Neil. And it's great to be here to actually kick off the event. And it's a great title, British Information Modelling. And I think, UK can be rightly proud, I think, of how far they've came in terms of this journey towards, we're using the term BIM today, but I think we're talking more and more about the digitisation of our construction sector and what that looks like. So I'm going to give a bit of an overview in terms of where's AECOM going in that journey towards digitisation and how BIM is starting to underpin it. But actually, we're talking about good quality information and how we start to manage it through an entire project life cycle. So who am I? Well, I'm David Philp. I'm Global Head of BIM and Information Management Consultancy at AECOM, if you like, the global provider of infrastructure services. And what do we call it? We don't really call it BIM. We talk about digital excellence, digital project delivery, and this thing called BIM sits quite firmly within it. I'm part of the UK BIM task group, and I chair the Scottish BIM task group as well. And I think it's interesting, we're seeing more and more public sector clients, both in the UK and worldwide, starting to think about that journey now in terms of, we've said it, digitisation. And I think we're going for a transformational journey, I think, from that world of analogue to starting to think more and more from, if you like, the world of outputs, to starting to think more and more about construction as a service, and to start thinking about actually how we can turn to more of an outcome-based economy. And what do we see? Well, I think it's fair to say we've had this thing called traditional construction, and we're seeing it being squeezed in two sides. It's been squeezed in one side, I think, by that whole world of advanced manufacture. We talk about additive construction, all this. But I think we also see advanced logistics as well starting to change things. And at the other side, we've got this whole digital economy. So we've got two forces pushing in this thing called digital construction. And we talk about Britain. Well, we do have what we call an industrial strategy, 2025. Has everybody read it? So yeah, as you said, yeah. So for Twitter purposes, 100% again. So, but it's got real ambitious targets, and I think it's great, that we have got targets and government there. So I think as we go from 2016 to 2025, we'll reshape in this term Industry 4.0, that fourth industrial revolution. And we'll talk about it a bit more. But what we are seeing, we are generally going on this paradigm shift. I think, we're generally changing into that world of digitisation, and there's a huge prize there at the end of it. A digital economy in terms of construction, smart cities, huge agenda. And actually, well, I think data is pretty cool. One of the questions that we're asked today, actually, what is data doing for us as an organisation? Well, one of the things it's really supporting in terms of how we make our information is, data turning into innovation. We're actually starting to transact on it a heck of a lot faster. It's starting to stimulate innovation. And I think when we talk about BIM, actually, okay, it means many different things. I think sometimes it's a bit of a Trojan horse. Actually, it's there to help us innovate and do things a lot smarter within these digital sandpits. One of the things we're seeing as well is we're being more productive in terms of what we're doing. And I don't just mean a modelling process, but how we manage information. And I think we've got to bring together these two bedfellows, if you like, of lean working paradigms, along with how we start to think about information management. I think the other thing is it's giving us that glimpse of foresight as well. It means we can be a bit future-wise. I think the more and more data we get in, the more we can do it in terms of analytics, and it lets us test it. And I think when we talk about BIM, we're probably doing two things. We're testing process, and we're testing data as we exchange it as well. So we're really on a journey. And I think what we see is, there's two things. We've got, I think, more on the right-hand side, there's a huge challenge. You think about the amount of projects out there. Well, here today in terms of Crossrail, you think how much information that they've gained. In fact, you look at High Speed 2, we know at the end of that project, should you wish to burn everything onto a DVD, there'd be enough DVDs there to go to the Mount Fujima. So it's a huge challenge for clients out there. We often hear this term now, big open data, huge volumes of data size, the velocity of data, I think more important, but also huge amounts of data sources as well coming in, and veracity of it. How does a client start to think about managing? It's a huge challenge, but also a huge opportunity out there as well. And the four things that we kind of put into there, so actually, we can think more and more about a digital DNA strand, the whole asset lifecycle, digitized and virtualized. We can start to then use advanced analytics around about it to start to trigger optimization of the asset performance as well. Well, and how do we do it? It's all about that information management. So we're probably trying to do two things. We're trying to capitalize on the data, both for ourselves and our clients, to give them meaningful insight. And at the same time, one of the things we're doing and more now is helping clients remove that burden of information management. And while data is, making us be a rock star, at the same time, if you get it wrong, it can be disastrous. We need to make sure it's well managed. We've got to treat it with real respect in terms of what we're doing. And I think the other thing, just because we're creating loads of data doesn't mean it's right. We've got to think about data validation more and more. And there's a good reason to do COBE, we like to validate our data. And what else is it doing? Well, we use this term digital excellence, but what it's really letting us do, we work in a global environment. I think more and more, I'm sure many organizations do here, it really lets us work 24/7. We're sharing design, we're sharing information that's following the sun. Obviously, there's not really sun up in Scotland, but we can start our day right in terms of maybe New Zealand coming into Australia, into Central Europe, across into UK, and working its way across America. So we are generally sharing information, pushing and pulling it, following the sun in terms of what we're doing. And here's one of the projects. In fact, we've got our Dale, where are you about? Yeah, see the man waving up there, fellow Scotsman. Dale is one of the architectural directors in this project. Al-Quakra Stadium in Dale term, I think it was 9 countries we were sharing information across, pushing and pulling. At least 9 countries that we were constantly sharing information of. In this project as well, you often hear the term generative design. And this project was used very much using generative design techniques, real parametric modeling, toolkit solutions as well. So a great example. So for us, when we talk about things like BIM, actually, it's about information management. It's about collaborating and connecting it. And what we're trying to make sure, both ourselves and our clients, have got access to that project information anywhere, anytime, in terms of mobile, but also making sure it's got consistency of approach to it as well in terms of how we manage it, and making sure it's available all through the project lifecycle, not just design and construct, but the key stages, if you like, especially in our Rebus 0 and 7. We've got to make sure we've got the circular data economy where we're constantly learning from our data sources as well. Again, I think everybody needs a good ramp in any diagram, and we're not any exception. We try to create our own journey, and I think when we talk about this whole thing, we're on a journey in terms of sector digitisation, and this is our one in terms of how we manage information. It's not a BIM wedge, but you can start to see there, we go through, we start with bronze level 0 in terms of it's maybe a local file share, but we're trying to kill that. We move on to collaborative ways of working, and that common data environment approach. But increasingly, we're moving to that managed, it's in terms of what we do now. Starting to get market sectors, templates around about it, almost trying to create these products within there, and start to think about automated data validation within there. But where we're starting to move to is this world of, think of that as level 2, we are starting to see that world of integrated engineering environments, again, often driven by clients, using techniques such as virtual desktop infrastructure. More and more are thinking about data provenance and how we can rapidly move our data sets around the globe. Closer to home, we are following level 2 processes. And it's interesting, what's level 2? Well, level 2 BIM, it's worth noting, for us it's about having a security wrap around about it. It's about having a process for information management through both CapEx and OpEx. It's also about soft landings. I think that's a key part of what we do. And we've got processes for managing information exchange. So we've been trying to make sure that we can embed, if you like, business as usual, these level 2 processes. So when we talk about British information modelling, we should be quite proud of the standards that we've actually got in the UK. They are certainly world class and world leading. They give consistency of approach, but they also let our SME partners play the part as well. It's open, it's collaborative in nature. So, well, what do we see? For us, information management is about data and processes coming together. And you think about a typical construction project, it's got that fuzziness to it. It's got that turmoil, constant tensions that are always going on. And what we're starting to see is, our information, data turn into information. We're starting to think about our analytics to ensure that well-informed decisions can be made. So it's giving information clarity. It's helping us in terms of efficient process. Ultimately, by making smarter decisions, it's helping us in terms of time and cost savings. And this is what it's starting to look like when we go up to that platinum version of our ramp. We call it I-cubed in terms of information, intelligence, and integration. And it's got several things within that integrated engineering environment. So we're starting to think about project interoperability. And one of the key words we're starting to see more and more is semantic web, really, really important for us. Information management, but hyper-information management, thinking about real-time, absolute exchanges in terms of what we're doing. And we've got an integrated asset lifecycle. We're right way through that whole process. And the big thing as well, amplified intelligence, starting to think about things such as Internet of Things. And that's a challenge as well. You know, starting to think about data warehouses and all these connections and gateways to start to bring it together. So as a business, we're starting to have to think about, you know, what this looks like for us. And we're starting to build our tools around about it, to think more and more about an integrated asset lifecycle. And we start to join things up globally and thinking more about, you know, the asset phases and how we can glue them all together. Like, by the way, can everybody see from here? I sort of stand back sort of thing. So, well, what does this mean? Well, I thought I deleted it, but it's still there, so let me bluff on it as well. But actually, you know, we're seeing this thing called BIM. And actually, is it technology? Is it process? Actually, if anything, it's about behaviours. It's about bringing people together and starting to, you know, really stimulate communication and that project life cycle. So I think that's a key part in terms of what we're doing. It's thinking about, you know, how we can try and approach this differently and start to think about different ways of working and moving from collaboration to integration. I know everybody says low-hanging fruit, model coordination. It's such a big cultural change when you can get everybody into that same room together. We're not just talking about clash detection, but we're talking about people having common understanding. You're starting to bring together the cost team with the construction team, the safety team, all around about that virtual campfire and making smart decisions. And for us, one of the key elements of bringing that is making sure we've got the operational team within there as well, doing these regular digital enabled views. So for us, it's helping us deliver successfully, not just in the world of buildings, but increasingly in terms of infrastructure. And we're seeing projects such as Crossrail and High Speed 2 that are challenging the boundaries. You think of High Speed 2, you know, that's going to be over, in terms at least a decade in the building of it. You know, you think actually, and I'm sure when we hear, you think back in Crossrail, did it even have an iPad, you know, when you started way back? You think about the technology change. Think about the technology change that will go for the likes of High Speed 2 and what we see at the end of there. So it's helping us deliver effectively. And I think the other big thing, you know, it's helping us streamline our business, and it's really helping us change that culture as well. There's a whole new culture around about what we're doing as well. We're also starting to think more and more about that centralized data management. We're bringing all these data sources together, right from the very top, the real world global, geospatial, and starting to bring it right down to the asset. So we're having to think more and more about, if you like, relational databases, classification, and actually what we're finding, you know, right at the start of a project, take the time to get the schema right. The classifications in terms of work breakdown structure, program in terms of cost breakdown, and indeed the asset dictionary as well. Starting to be able to glue all these things together, hugely important for us. So we're having to think more and more about interoperability as well in terms of what we're doing. We're also seeing different client demands as well. And you know, it's interesting, we're going through, we've probably seen a bit of journey, the digitised estate more and more. Creating project information models, turning them into asset information models, and then starting to think about digitised asset management strategies. And when you look at the UK standards, PAS 1192 Part 3, it really, you know, one of the key things, it really looks at how we would enable a digitisation of ISO 55000, and I'm sure that's everybody's favourite ISO. Thought it was. But you start to think about this. We're starting to now turn, if you've got clients, that's two of our projects where we're doing this. On the left-hand side, Sydney Opera House, we were doing that asset information model. In Denver Airport, again, that whole digitisation of the operational stages. So we're seeing more and more client demand, and we're thinking actually about optimisation of asset performance. And actually, you know, you think about it, what are we starting to do? I think to some extent we're giving assets some degree of brain, some degree of intelligence with them as well. We're able to give them pulse checks. You know, look at the building's health, starting to speak to us more and more. And you think if you're putting life cycle data into it, we can start to think about self-procurement. And we're starting to see that brain in terms of having probably 4 quadrants to it. Up on the left, you know, real-time data analytics, Internet of Things, the performance data set that's coming in. And down, I think, 2 emerging trends, you know, in terms of, you know, where cloud's really going. And we're starting to see that early computer-based learning as well. You know, where's AI really going to take us as a built environment? I think, you know, the future is really going to be quite exciting. Okay, does that exist today? You know, we've got a client over in India, in Indora, and it's a smart city that we're doing. The client was across the EcoBuild, and you can start to see how they're starting to give the city intelligence. You know, starting to bring together these control and command centres all these huge amounts of live data that's feeding in through data warehouses, and we're starting to think about real-time data analytics. So we're starting to see clients starting on that journey now, not thinking about a project or a program, but the early days, I think, of these real smart cities that are going to liberate the value of the data. And actually, I really like this, because I think this is a bit of the future. You know, we're starting to create assets that learn and adapt the needs of the occupants and users. Well, actually, what's this little toy got to do with it? Has anybody seen this before? Has anybody got one? It's a startup, really smart. It's a Cognitoy, and the idea is, you know, as a child grows up, sort of thing, it learns to respond. It's actually linked through to the IBM Watson supercomputer, and it learns in terms of voice patterns, and it will start to, you know, different techniques coming across that it's going to learn with the child, sort of thing. And you think about that same thing in terms of assets that are learning with us as we go as well. You know, counting in terms of occupancy level, linked up to the BMS. You go out there, you think about it, you've got a little bubble maker that's linked up to the Twitter account. You know, why can't we start doing this, having the clouds above the head sort of thing that says, when you come into the room, I'm Neil, you know, I'm actually a bit warm sort of thing, turn it down, which often happens. So heading to the end of this, actually, you know, what we're doing, we're thinking more and more about creating smart assets. So trying to think actually what is a smart asset? Well, I think a smart asset is something that can hold a mirror up to the varied needs of its people and its occupants as it goes through its day and its life cycle. It can respond and adapt to these. It's maybe linked to the BMS system. It's got intelligence, that real asset intelligence in terms of occupancy levels, carbon. It's sensor rich. It's got that interconnectedness right the way through in terms of transportation systems. And I think it liberates that value. We talk about what the difference is in collaboration and integration. It's real-time data exchanges. And I think we're starting to see more and more, again, you know, the contextual data, that social data that's coming in as well. And I think the big thing, you know, it's about transparency. And I think when we talk about Digital Built Britain, it's one of the key things. It's giving us real transparency. And the concept of Industry 4.0 that I just find so, so exciting. You know, it comes from Germany, we're seeing like the Siemens and Bosch following it. And actually what's within there, you know, these are some of the constructs that we see to make up that world of Industry 4.0. I'm sure it's things that Innovate UK are looking at already, but if you aren't, you know, give us a shout. Thumbs up for that one. But these assets, sensors coming in, you know, we talked about advanced logistics, and I think that concept of outcome and performance-based contracts as well, back to servitization of the contract. And let's not think, you know, forget about, you know, what's this going to mean in terms of nanotechnologies as well, smart materials in terms of graphene. What are they going to do as well? You can imagine if you've got a lightweight bogie and a high-speed, you know, tour such like, what's that going to mean in terms of design? And I think we've got to consider as well, you know, that real world of autonomous plant. You know, it's not far away. You know, I think we're going to see that heavy industrial as well. And the things that are real just now as well, you can see them in terms of any gamification and simulation of business process. You can see that that's what we want to be gaming. It's something that's going to give you a better performance outcome. You know, one of the things we're now asked, we use the concept plain language question. You know, are you getting better, you know, surgical outcomes from doing this? Well, we can start to gamify it, making real-time lightning decisions. And talking of lightning decisions, I'm now going to make a lightning departure to London City Airport. So if you do have any questions, please, at the Philpster, I will respond to them from the airport with a small gin and tonic in my hand, if I make it. So thank you for listening to our story. Cheers.